And while we're talking about money, the state's budget deficit is approaching $20 billion. What do you see as the legislature's role in addressing the deficit? How can this be accomplished with the requirement for a 2/3 majority to pass the budget? And we will start with Mr. Caserta.
Again, look at our record. Santa Clara 2 years ago, we had a citywide audit. So on the spending side, what we did, we eliminated all duplicated programs. We are the only city in the county the last 3 years to have a surplus in our budget. Last year, we took 40% of that surplus, almost $5 million, and put it in a savings account like all of us do for our personal finances. Number one, I would mandate an audit, duplicated programs eradicate, put money back into our savings when we're back up. We're down right now. As a result, the second component of that is to raise revenues. We need to restore the vehicle license fees that has been toxic on cities and counties to $7 billion tune. Number two, Republicans talk about laissez-faire, let the market decide things. Well, on signage fees, when you're on the highway, those fees have not been raised since the 1970s. So I say to those Republicans, let the market decide things. If we did that, those fees would bring in another $2 billion a year. Also, we're the only state in the country that doesn't allow oil companies that are making record windfall profits to basically pay a surveillance tax when they extract oil from our state. I would support at minimum a 2% tax on that. And then lastly, the yacht loophole tax, which basically is an abomination when teachers and hospitals are closing, needs to be basically taken away. By doing that, we would bring over $15 billion alone in revenue without raising taxes on working families. That's what I would do, and that's what I've done.
Mr. Fong.
Well, to continue on with my expenditure, the $8.5 billion in uncollected taxes would be one part of the revenue. The oil severance tax, as Dominic mentioned, would bring in about $1.2 billion, and other uncollected fees, such as property insurance fees and perhaps a vehicle license fee. It depends on the May revised. You know, there's been a lot of numbers floating around: 20 billion, 14.5 billion, 10 billion, 8 billion. The May revise will have a more accurate figure, and that's coming up this Wednesday. And depending on what the figure is, then I would, if it's 20 billion, then I would also support the vehicle license fee as well, because we need to bring in another $6 billion with the vehicle license fee. And so that's the way I would correct the state budget.
And Ms. Song?
I agree with my opponents. So without being redundant, I want to also mention that I like to look into split tax roll with Prop 13. Many businesses make profits in our state, and I think it's good that we have businesses that are investing our state. But I think it's also time that we look at how Prop 13 was drawn and split between the private property owners and business owners. Also, you asked about the 2/3 vote. And I like to mention, it's same thing as being on the board or on the city council. You make promises as a candidate, and you learn that when you're on a board or a city council, you have to be able to count to majority. I think it's same thing in Sacramento. You have 80-member board. That's how I would approach it, and you have to work to count to majority to pass the bill.
The next question, implementation of AB 32, and I'm sorry to say I don't know what that is proving to be a major challenge. What role do you think the legislature should have in realizing the objectives? Can you tell us what AB 32 is?
It's the
global warming implementation. So the first responder would be Mr. Caserta.
Well, I appreciate that question. This is a direct result of the failure of leadership with the neocon Republican administration that does not believe global warming is happening. And the reason I say that, when the federal government does not act, it puts more impotence on the state government. And we, as in California, have been a leader on this. AB 32 basically says in the next few years we need to go down to 1990 levels. And this is where we need to have government as the stick and as the carrot. As the stick, oil companies are not going to do the right thing. We need to mandate that. One of the things I'm running on, auto manufacturers aren't going to do the right thing. Over the next 10 years, we must mandate as a state, via visa laws, that all manufacturers that want to do business in California must increase their fuel efficiency by 50%. If they do not, we need to fine them and fine them and fine them as the stick. But also we need to use government as the carrot, meaning to incentivize people. We need to make permanent the research and development and manufacturing tax credits to keep clean and green jobs here. One of the reasons I'm endorsed solely by the Democratic Forum of Silicon Valley and many different environmentalists. And lastly, again, I hope my opponents talk about their record on this. Santa Clara is leading the country when it comes to clean green power with our Silicon Valley Green Power Program and our award 2 weeks ago from the EPA as a green power community. Only one of 2 cities in the nation that received that. I'm excited to be a small part of that in Santa Clara on my record of being green. I applaud the legislature on AB 32.
Thank you. Mr. Fong?
Thank you. That's a very good question. AB 32 means to lower the greenhouse gas emissions back to 1990 levels by the year 2020, and additional 2% every year to 2050 for a total reduction of 80% of the greenhouse gas reduction levels. And I totally support it. We need to find alternative fuel sources because the fossil fuels are contributing 81% of the greenhouse gas that's in our atmosphere right now. And so by looking for alternative fuel sources, we also have to build alternative vehicles. And so we need to mandate the automobile industry that we sell 50% of the automobiles to be alternative fuel vehicles by the year 2020. I would introduce legislation to that fact. They're scoping AB 32 right now, and if the scoping doesn't go far enough to reach the goals, I'll introduce legislation so that we will reach those goals. The AB 32 also addresses the need for solar energy, alternative energy sources, and I support the solar energy movement as well as wind energy and hydrogen energy. We need R&D tax credits, manufacturers tax credits, and solar tax credits to incentivize the whole industry to go solar. And so I support all that stuff. Thank you.
And Ms. Song?
My opponent has asked us to talk about our record, and it's kind of tough to talk about our record when you are on an education board. But I can share that just recently, our County Board of Education looked at our budget and realized that we had a little bit of surplus in our reserves. So we started to make priorities and what would it take for us to do something that would always want, sort of like a wish list. And one of them was installing solar power panels on our buildings. And it was a nice idea, and we didn't actually scratch it off just yet, but it was very, very expensive to the fact that it would take us 100 years to pay off of installing such solar power panels on our buildings as opposed to just paying our gas. And there was a healthy discussion about being a responsible citizen or government, but also at the same time, in a given budget crisis, would it be a smart idea to do? So that sort of inspired me to think, wouldn't it be great if there would be incentives for local agencies and local government to do such a thing and not be so costly to do such a environmentally responsible project? I think all of us, including our children, have been educated. My kindergartner, Nicholas, knows reduce, reuse, recycle. I think we've been very successful about that campaign. I think we need to come up with a certain campaign to lower greenhouse emission gas. Thank you.
The next question is, what measures would you support to increase high school graduation rates? And we'll start with Mr. Caserta. No, I'm sorry, Ms. Song.
I think I see this issue very closely being on the Santa Clara County Board of Education. We provide alternative education. For some of you who don't know what that might be, is education in juvenile halls, community day schools, or in Boys and Girls Ranch. I also had to drop out of high school in my senior year because of my family issues, and I had to go find a job to support my younger brother. So having had that hardship, I also understand categorizing dropouts as troublemakers is not fair to all. There are understandable circumstances that may be different from one to the other. I think it's important to continue to fund alternative education at the county level, but also provide options for those high school students that may not necessarily fit in four-year school system. We recently had to close down a charter school that was not financially fit, and we, as a board, made a decision to use our reserve to fund such a charter school so that they could finish the remainder year. We had, about a month later, many different looking teenagers coming and thanking us that if we had not used our reserves and closed that school in the mid-year, they would have been out on the street and would not have returned to their local district schools. So I think we need to continue to support alternative education.
Mr. Caserta?
This is the genesis of my campaign. My professional life has been devoted to teaching our public school students, and I'm the candidate that has written about this extensively and has been published on this. Only 25% of our students in California are graduating college, and that's okay. The question is, what are we doing with the 3 out of other 4 students that have skills? We need to reinvest in career tech education. That would be my first bill that I would pass, mandating public schools that you take a career tech class. For example, at Santa Clara High School, we had 7 auto shop classes my first year 11 years ago. We now have 1 for 1 semester. We're telling kids that aren't necessarily going to be lawyers that we think your skills are not important, and that is a sad fact in California. We need to do a better job in investing in that. And second of all, in the clean green movement, which I'm talking about, we need to be teaching that in our schools. Why aren't we teaching things, as I said before, like solar panel installation? And for kids like many in Mountain View that are going to go to college, we need to offer more grant and Pell Grants instead of high-interest loans that are making credit card companies record profits. And what did we do in Santa Clara? 2 years ago, we passed a perpetual scholarship fund for public school students in Santa Clara that are going to college. We gave them $5,000 a year towards college. Kids are average now $32,000 in debt after college. We have to do a better job to lower that, to incentivize people to finish college. So those are specific things I would want to do, and those are things I've specifically done. And I'm glad my opponent in a moment is going to agree with me because I've been talking about that since day one. Thank you for the question.
Mr. Fong?
I agree with you, only that career technical education would be my second priority. My first priority would be to close the achievement gap, because the achievement gap, there's underachievers that are the ones that are dropping out, and we need to close it and create achievement for the underachievers. There are successful programs out there. In Sunnyvale School District, there's a Project Help, which provides 175 additional hours of teaching time, and that is a private-public partnership that incentivize the individuals to participate in the programs. And so we need to close the achievement gap by providing high-speed information age computers to all schools. And so we need to equalize the funding level for all schools as well. And so there's a lot of problems in the achievement gap. We need to do research and data to identify where the achievement gap is occurring and to tackle the problem right where it's happening. If it's in math and science in the middle schools, we need to hire better math and science teachers and provide incentives to bring those math and science teachers in as well. And so I support the career technical education component as well as a second priority, because many people just graduate from high school and they're looking for a trade, and we need to develop a trade while they're in high school. And so that's the 2 ways that I would look at solving the dropout rate.
Thank you. Very specifically, what legislation are you prepared to champion in the environmental area if you are elected? So very specifically. And the first person will be Mr. Caserta.
Thank you for the question. The second major reason I'm running is clean, green jobs. We as Democrats talk about how NAFTA is SHAFTA, how manufacturing jobs have left our state. But we're not just losing jobs to China and India. We're losing them to Nevada, Tesla with New Mexico. Genentech just had a business expansion, and they wanted to stay in California. and they put jobs, thousands of jobs, in Oregon. So what I would specifically do is I would make permanent the research and development and manufacturing tax credit. Second of all, within 10 years, auto manufacturers must increase fuel efficiencies by 50%, or they will be fined heavily for that. Those are two specific things I would want to do. And you know what? Business and the environment are working hand in hand here. And that is why the Democratic Forum of Silicon Valley, which represents a lot of clean, green entrepreneurs, has solely endorsed my candidacy. And the California Democratic Council, along with Anna, has endorsed my candidacy. So those are two specific things that I would do. I would encourage you to go to my websites and my opponents on those issues, and companies that are green and that provide jobs like, oh, stop. So thank you for that question. 30 seconds left. Okay. I mean, specifically companies that I've said before, like Apple Computer, like Applied Materials, like National Semiconductor. And today, I got to tell you, I'm really glowing today because I was at Google, invited by Google today to go on their campus, and it brought me back to my college days, and I look forward to hopefully their endorsement at the end of the week. It was a great meeting, and the candidate that people are looking at is my candidacy for my specific comprehensive environmental vision and record.
Mr. Fong.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. Very specifically, what legislation are you prepared to champion in the environmental area?
SB 32. They're scoping that plan right now. I would support SB 32, AB 32, excuse me, and that would be to lower the greenhouse gas emissions. But they're scoping the plan, and if the scoping doesn't go far enough, I'll introduce legislation to make sure that we meet the timetables of reducing the greenhouse gas emissions.
And Ms. Song?
I would look into our own government agencies, such as EPA, to make sure that they're funded enough to follow through the regulations that they're imposing our businesses. Oftentimes, I'm hearing that they have a stronger regulations in our state, but the person who would be in charge of handling a certain business would start working on regulations, and without finishing the permit, for instance, period, they would move on and it would just delay. I think that makes our businesses very tough to navigate through our state's tougher law. And also, as Dominic mentioned, I think it's easier to regulate by providing incentives than going after a tougher punishments. So I would first look into our agency to make sure that they're well funded and make sure that they can follow through. Thank you.
And our last question. What will be your 2 top legislative priorities? 2. And the first person will be Mr. Fong.
My first priority would be healthcare reform, to bring about to support SB 840, the Sheila Kuehl bill. My second priority would be to support a gay marriage bill, because it's a civil rights issue.
And Ms. Song.
My first priority would be protecting our education. I've heard across the board our current legislators saying the budget is tight, money is tight, and everybody has to take a cut. And I don't believe that. Money is tight, but I can't tell Nicholas that he has to take a cut and the kindergarten program will be cut. So my first priority would be protecting education. Then I will look into women's issues. I would make sure the shelters and nonprofits that are providing women's shelters and other programs are also looked into and taken care of.
Thank you. And that ends our question. I'm sorry. Mr. Caserta, I'm sorry.
Not a problem. Education, specifically mandating career tech education in our public high schools. And the second component of that, within that, teaching clean, green jobs. That is my vision for this race and my candidacy, and that's why I'm solely endorsed by the California Teachers Association. Healthcare. We need a comprehensive, universal approach. Until we elect a Democratic governor, what are we going to do in return? We need to make sure, number one, that insurance companies aren't dropping patients for pre-existing conditions. We need electronic health to incentivize people to lower costs like Kaiser is doing. And we need to make sure all labeling on food safety occurs. My vision is specifically why I'm endorsed by the California Nurses Association. So those are two specific things I would do. And at the end of the day, what I want to do is restore responsiveness back in government. We got people in Sacramento talking too much to lobbyists and not to you. I have now 33 coffee chats between now and June 3rd. I've done 16 and 5 in Mountain View alone to come into your households and your neighborhoods and your dining rooms and your parlors to hear what you think. Wouldn't it be nice to have government back like that? And what I would specifically do is every quarter I would come to every part of this district and have town hall meetings and restore how that should be done way back in our republic. And the second component of that, I would restore community committee meetings where I ask 15 normal folks, not the biggest contributors of my campaign, not lobbyists, the 15 most interested people, and have about 6 to 7 different issues, and you guys would create ideas that I would carry in the legislature. That's what I would do.
Thank you. That does end our question period. Now we're going to have closing statements from the candidates. And the candidates worked out this arrangement on their own. The first candidate will be Ms. Song.
Thank you for having us tonight. What I like to say is that my motivation in anything and everything I would do in the decision-making process in Sacramento will be thinking of our children and the families that are working hard to raise them. Also, I want to emphasize that Silicon Valley is a great place to live, and it's an important place in our state. But oftentimes, I think we're overlooked. I think our voice is not heard in Sacramento. I think that's because we are outnumbered by Southern California representatives. And I think I will be able to build a lot of healthy relationship with the representatives from Southern California because I grew up there. So I will be able to build relationships, also convince them why Silicon Valley, although may not be center of the universe like LA, is important, is important to them, and therefore why they need to take care of our needs so that our state can be healthy. Thank you for tonight.
And Mr. Fong.
Thank you for having us this evening. It's been a pleasure and I had a good time. I've been a public leader in this community for over 35 years and I have a long track record of success in being that. I'm committed to this community and I'm devoted to 3 dozen nonprofits and 3 commissions in the county and the city levels, and I want to change things for the better. In my educational record as a community college trustee and a professor, I provided college opportunities, and for that I've been endorsed by the California Federation of Teachers. To promote the environment, I've been supporting the AB 32 to lower the greenhouse gas emissions, and we need to do that by looking for alternative fuel sources. And I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club for my environmental record. I want to build a more equitable society. I've been working my entire life to do that, and I'm honored to have the endorsements of Congress members Mike Honda, Zoe Lofgren, Anna Eshoo, as well as Sally Lieber, and the California Democratic Party, the Sierra Club, the California Federation of Teachers. I'd be honored to have your support as well. Thank you.
And Mr. Caserta.
I want to thank the League and Paul and Anna tonight. I thought it was a great dialogue. We deserve so much better than what we have right now in Sacramento collectively. You know, we can all talk a good game and say what we want to do, but the best indication of what you want to do is what you've done. I've balanced budget and put money back into our savings. We are a very clean, green city. We were the first city in the county to provide affordable housing above the 20% mandate. I've created and retained jobs. I've been a great part of a team in Santa Clara where we've been very responsive. That's the type of leadership I want to bring to Sacramento. That's the type of campaign I have run by meeting with many of you. I know a lot of you have gotten 4 or 5 of my community letters of people like yourselves that are letting me come into your house. That's how I want to lead this area. Silicon Valley, the cradle of entrepreneurship, deserves someone that not just shares our progressive values when it comes to progressive issues of choice, of gay marriage, which we all support here, but we need someone that also can talk about job creation and job retention, someone that can bring people together and create jobs and innovation here. We need that here because we are losing jobs in this area. And unless we have a robust economy, we can't talk about better schools and more health care and more affordable housing. Please take a look at our records of what we've done and what we're going to do. And as Democrats, who makes us Democrats? Teachers, nurses, police officers, firefighters, environmentalists. All those people are agreeing that my candidacy is the one that they are supporting, and I'm honored to have that. And if you want change, and you want someone that's going to roll up their sleeves and work hard and understand that leadership is listening as well, I would like you to please look at my candidacy because I think I'm doing that. And with all said and done, whatever happens in 22 days, I look forward to working with all my colleagues and all of you, and thank you for tonight, the League. I appreciate your questions.
The League of Women Voters thanks the candidates for appearing at this forum and the audience for their interest in becoming informed voters. I wish to thank the League's Voter Service Chair, Jan Pepper, and her committee, Coita Chambers, Crownie Billick, Delia Ibarra, Sherry Barbet, Ellen Wheeler, Jane Turnbull, and Valerie Harris for their work and for organizing this forum. Don't vote alone on June 3rd. Take friends and neighbors to the polls with you. Thank you.